Hello, everyone. My name is Paul Third. This is Mixing Wednesdays, and I just have to do it, right? Because this video has annoyed me so much. The truth about audio plugins. Let's do it, eh? Right, okay, so there is a video that's going pretty viral just now. I say viral, but it's like this video has done better than any video I've ever done. But it's annoyed me because it's kind of basically saying everything that we are doing on this channel is basically a lot of bull. And I just have to address it. Because what I don't want to happen is that people that are new to the industry are just people that aren't really in the know and do much experimentation with plugins, think that they need to buy analog hardware and it's a necessity to make like amazing and great mixes, which is kind of what this is doing. This video is basically, in a nutshell, perpetuating the idea of analog is always better than plugins and plugins are never going to be as good as analog and stuff, right? It's all very, very, very subjective. But I'll give you my viewpoints on it, okay?
Hey everyone, this is Barum, and today I want to discuss the truth about audio plugins, particularly the many that have claimed to have successfully cloned the real pieces of hardware. Some will promote these plugins as being indistinguishable from the hardware, while others will carefully and diplomatically say they are different, but just as good. The truth is, these plugins are inferior to their real hardware counterparts.
I'm just going to say it right now, even if you switch off this video, right? I'm going to tell you right now, the truth is not that plugins are always and are inferior to hardware, right? That is not true, okay? I have a lot of proof into that. There's an entire hardware versus plugins playlist. I'll put a link to it here, all right? We'll get into this, but guys, it's not the truth. It is subjective. That's all I'm going to say. What you might feel is inferior to you might not be inferior to somebody else, right? Everybody's different. Everybody mixes different. But in terms of the tests and the shootouts that I've done, no, that is a lot of bull. Absolute a lot of bull. Let's continue.
You may also find yourself regularly questioning why famous professionals such as Andrew Sheps and others claim they now work strictly in the box using plugins.
Right, and in terms of Andrew Sheps does mix in the box. Andrew Sheps was working and has worked with some of the best analog gear you could think of. Pretty sure it was a Neve console that he had. And he made the decision because he felt that the plugins had got to a point where the difference wasn't enough for an average listener to go, wow, this mix sounds absolutely amazing. Which brings it down to a very, very, very important point that he never mentions here. A lot of the times, guys, you can have the best tools in the world, but it all comes down to the engineer and the engineer's ears, okay? It's about knowing what to do with the tools that you have, okay? You can have what Andrew Sheps used to have, the Neve console with all the hardware gear you could think of, and have Andrew Sheps in the box, and Andrew Sheps cream you because you don't understand how to utilize the tools that you have. Okay? Very important, right? Let's continue.
While others, like Chris Lord-Alge, insist on still working completely analog. CLA himself, 22 minutes and 43 seconds into a recent Waves audio video titled Mixing Masterclass, Secrets of the Mix with Chris Lord-Alge, where he states, "You know they invented Pro Tools and all this stuff because it was a cheaper way to make audio. So don't think you're working on the highest technology that there is in the world. We're just trying to make it work. The highest technology in the world was consoles and outboard gear, and then adding electronics to work with it." To me, this says it all. And I must admit, I find this both humorous and ironic that he lets this slip in a video promoting plugins.
Now, obviously, CLA, right, is going to continue working out the box because that's what he prefers. You got to remember, working with analog and digital, I've worked with consoles and like when I was at college and university and stuff, and yeah, I do love the feeling of like consoles. But a lot of the time, it's about workflow. It's about what you're. Chris Lord-Alge, right? CLA was using and has been using an SSL console his entire career. So for him to change something that already works, why would he do that? But just because you let a plugin company model your hardware, right, doesn't mean that you have to mix in the box. It's whatever works for you, okay? So, just putting that out there. Let's continue.
By the way, guys, I'll leave the link to that video in the description.
Why is there so many photos? Why? Why is the need for all these photos? I'm not a 3-year-old child. You know what I mean? Yeah, probably my wee lass would watch this and be like, oh, yeah, all these photos, this is great. I'm not like, we're audio engineers. We're not children, right? There's no need for all these photos. Fucking lucky I'm not epileptic, man. Fucking like this. Right, okay, let's continue. Sorry, let's continue.
And also let me know if Waves ever takes down that video after I post this, because it would not be the first time in the media or even the audio world where things get quote-unquote erased out of documentation or accessible via the internet.
Mate, there's no conspiracies. Like, it's not the first time the media has been, removed. Like, what? What are you talking about? There's no fucking big conspiracy. Oh my God. It just gets worse and worse, does it? Fucking hell. Let's continue. Let's continue.
If you don't believe me, look up everything you can find about the hardware version of the Waves L2 ultramaximiser. And maybe Sound on Sound magazine can chime in and tell me why I can no longer find the article they originally made on the unit.
Maybe the reason you can't find it is because the article is probably about 20 years old. We're in 2021. Really? L2? How could you talk in 2021 about plugins not sounding like hardware and bring up a plugin that's 20 years old? Like, think about what was available at that time, right? We didn't have smartphones and stuff like that. We're still on Nokia 3310s. My God. Like, we didn't have smart TVs. There were no Netflix. Nothing was wireless. It's like, was Bluetooth around? I don't even know if Bluetooth was around. And he's talking about analog plugins. As early as like the 2000s, 19 Oatcake, ages ago. What stupid idea to put this in an argument, right? A plugin in technology that's 20 years ago.
I'll tell you why. Because a company that creates both software and hardware is counterconducive to itself when pushing a narrative that the software is just as good or better. This is the same dilemma you will find in other companies today doing the same thing, such as Manley Laboratories and Chandler Limited. So yes, despite it being contradictory to their own marketing strategies and ethos, brands such as Manley Labs with their snazzy yet elitist slogan, Tubes Rule, in vein of their audiophile market, where they can get away with selling a $20,000 tube amplifier for your home stereo, can also license their name, and I guess you can say sound, to companies like Universal Audio, where the talking heads can push it to you, the consumer, as being just like the real thing.
Here's something that I need to let's just kind of wrap this up quick, right? Because I can speak about it for ages. There is a difference between licensing and endorsing, okay? Right, Chandler hasn't came out, Manley hasn't came out, all of the Waves plugins, SSL, Neve, API, none of these brands have came out and said, we created that plugin, right? When you endorse the plugin, that's you saying, we had an input into making this plugin. The brands do not have any input into making the plugin when it's a licensing deal, right? UED, Waves, okay? Softtube with Chandler and stuff. It's a licensing deal. You are licensing the brand, the look of the hardware, the name of the hardware, right? If you want to make a plugin and say that this is modeling a Chandler, right, then you have to go to Chandler and get a licensing deal for the brand. There's a difference between licensing and endorsing, okay? If he would have used Apogee's Pultec, that would have been great. And know what? I would have went, no, he has a point here. But no, again, all his arguments are just like kind of just really half-arsed, right? They're just really half-arsed. Apogee would have made sense because Pulse, who make the Pultecs now, right, they have came out and said, we endorse this, right? We have helped create this plugin. And yes, right, it's true. Why it is counterproductive for a hardware brand to make a plugin that sounds exactly like the hardware that they're selling for thousands and sell a plugin that sounds exact same for a couple of £100, okay? Same with like Empirical Labs and stuff, right? Obviously, when people do these tests and they test the plugin versus the hardware, it sounds very, very close, but the hardware always seems to have this extra little bit. That extra little bit of 5 to 10%, it's giving you a taste, right? Which is what he speaks about, and he's kind of right in saying it's there to give you a taste for the real deal. All right, it's just absolutely like it just annoys me because it's like honestly he was onto something, but he made a terrible argument. Okay, which kind of follows on in this video. So let's continue. Okay.
On the argument of quality, it just doesn't add up. So you may ask yourself at this point, what makes the real hardware so great, and why can't plugins fully model their sound and character? I will answer this question in two parts. Part 1, they can, but, and it's a big but, they can't Yet. Not even close.
Well, that is absolutely bull, because if you check out my hardware versus plugins playlist, you will hear algorithmic plugins like the UAD Pultec that sounds identical to a real-life Pultec. Also, the API sounds almost identical to the API. If you check the Tim, and this is what another thing that annoyed me as well, is that he's not talking about convolution sampling here. There's two ways to kind of model plugins. Algorithms, okay, you can code an algorithm, or you can sample the hardware and use convolution sampling, okay? It doesn't have to be purely circuitry like what UAD do, but guess what? There are plugins that sound almost identical, and sometimes in the case of like Tim P compressors, I actually, and a lot of people like me, actually prefer Tim P's Opto 32 to the LA2A hardware, and also the Tim P L Bus 2 to an SSLG bus. Okay, a lot of people actually prefer plugins to hardware. So again, wrong. Plugins can sound better and just as identical to hardware, and it doesn't matter how closely they replicate circuitry.
You have to understand, the way they create these plugins is so that it'll work for everyone, or at least as many people with a modern computer without much fuss. That means whether you have a fancy 16-core CPU with all the RAM in the world, or a minimalist laptop setup, you will still be able to use these plugins and probably 10 or 20 instances of them within your already 100-plus plugin-filled project.
And again, that's bull, because we all know about acoustical audio. Oh my god, do acoustical audio care about your CPU? No. Do they what? They use convolution sampling, which absolutely kills, absolutely ruins CPU. And you need a very, 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 very powerful processor. Not everybody can utilize real-time acoustical audio. You have to utilize freezing. There's a whole video I've done on that as well. So, no, that's a lie as well, right? The limitations to plugins aren't to every plugin. He likes to like blanket plugins all under the one cover, right? So again, like acoustical audio, no, that isn't accessible to everybody. Again, the file size is, you load a brand new impulse response with every move that you do in that plugin. So, but again, he's not speaking about convolution sampling here, right? So let's move on.
So what's really wrong with them? Here's where it gets interesting and why I find that I don't really want to use most anymore. Phase. Lest all the other attributes of plugins failing to completely replicate the dimensions of a piece of hardware, the root of all issues lies in phase.
No, the root of all issues doesn't lie with phase, okay? If you don't get the linear frequency response, right, you don't get the THD, right? Again, there's lots of things about plugin coding, but I think people call it round robin and stuff like that. There's so much stuff in the coding, but in terms of the main principles, linear frequency response and harmonics, okay? You get them right, you'll get close enough. I mean, phase is always going to be a part, yes. Phase is, and I'm not going to lie, phase is going to be a part of like some of the reasons why you might not get 100% close. But then if that was the case, then why do lots of plugins that I've tried out sound almost identical or better than the hardware? Why is that? He can't answer that. Let's move on.
Let's break that down to a more simple example. When I use most plugins, I hear the sound spectrum flatten.
Yes, that is true, and that is why plugins have developed. That is why I've just oversampled Waves plugins, and that's the reasons why a lot of plugins now have oversampling in, because again, a lot of the times the reasons why plugins sound flat is because of aliasing, okay? And again, you oversample, all the aliasing comes out, and guess what? You get a lot more of that transient response. The less aliasing you have, the less flat it's going to sound, okay?
Plugins are not able to replicate the top end or low end like their analog counterparts.
That's a lie, absolute lie, because again, if you've done your research, and Tim P, for example, see that low mid thing? I have said it is very hard for plugins to replicate it, and it is something that is quite hard. Now, very odd how acoustical audio have done it, UAD have done it as well, and Tim P, okay? Tim P is, I sometimes call it the master of plugin compression. But again, you listen to the LA2A, listen to that shootout that I did, okay, on the LA2A, and also as the L Bus 2, okay? He can nail that. He can get that kind of low-mid analog hit.
So let's use this analogy. If your stereo audio was the walls of a long hallway, right and left, would it be easier to see the end of that hallway if the walls were straight or bent and skewed? This is the width or inversely smeared effect that can occur with interharmonic phase shift.
He does have a point here. This is where he is right, okay? Have you ever kind of hear a lot of times in high end, there's some acustica stuff, I'm just going to be honest, there's some acustica stuff if you hear it in the high end, where it kind of sounds a little bit smeary in the high end. But again, it's convolution sampling, so I don't know enough, but I can hear it, and I've always wondered if that is phase. If it is phase, or if it's possibly ringing. So phase, yeah, phase can be an issue, okay, but it still doesn't explain why plugins can still sound identical, okay? Phase can be an issue, but there are other things as well. Here's the thing, either the plugins are nailing the phase relationship of the hardware, or phase doesn't really have as much of an impact as linear frequency response, harmonics, oversampling, aliasing, blah, 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 coding, you know what I mean?
And so, can you mix with plugins? Yes. Can you get good sounds from them and a good mix? Arguably, yes.
Arguably, yes. Arguably, yes. You're going to tell me that most of modern mixes now, like Serban Guinea, like probably the best mixing engineer of the past 20 years, made everything, uses the metric halo strip. He uses hardware, but he's hybrid, but he uses plugins as well. So, again, stuff like that. What are you on about? Some of the best records just now are mixed in the box. But what do I know, What do I know? Right, let's go.
Can you still invoke someone's emotions musically? Yes. But do they sound and behave just like the real thing? No.
Again, he's very definitive here. He's very, very, very focused on no. And here's the thing, right, what's really annoyed me. He's taken all this time to go into all of this detail about phase, right? All this detail about phase, all these lovely photos, right? That just like make me feel like I'm back in nursery or kindergarten, as you Americans call it, okay? And I'm just like, out of all the time that you took to make all these photos and go into all that detail, lovely detail about phase, not one audio test. Not one audio test. Honestly, see if you would have just done what I'm doing now and spoke to the camera and spent less time looking for photos and put actual audio tests in, it would have taken you less time and you would have actually been able to show people your argument. But no, he prefers to put in lovely little crappy photos instead of actually putting in audio tests and putting your money where your mouth is. Like what I do, okay? So remember, check the channel, because I do put my money where my mouth is, okay?
And so to the famous mixing engineers who currently push and promote plugins and claim they have moved completely in the box, I argue that their best mixes are behind them and they are able to sit on their laurels and fame while taking the convenient way out.
Again, just controversy, guys, right? Again, it's, as I said earlier, he's trying to say to you that, like, it's the tools that make the engineer. It's how you use them. It is how you use them. Shakir King, Dave Pensado, right? Dave Pensado mixes fucking a ton in the box. Look at the plugins that Dave Pensado makes. My God, most of his best records were mixed with so many different plugins, right? You see, he's honestly trying to say that Dave Pensado and all these guys that are now in the box advancing with the technology, yeah, their days are behind them. Guess what? Who's making records these days? Who's making #1 hits? Mostly guys in the box, eh? Let's carry on.
Andrew Sheps claims, and this is a paraphrase, that once the audio has turned into digital format, plugins are perfectly competent in manipulating the signal. He even goes as far as to fearmonger the use of analog to digital conversion.
Fearmonger. For anybody that watches Andrew Sheps does not fearmonger. What is he doing? It's just controversy, right? We all love Andrew Sheps. He's one of the best audio geeks out there. He's got experience of working analog and digital. He knows fucking more than this guy, does he? Fucking hell, man. Let's move on.
Saying that this has more of a degradation on your sound than using software. This is wrong.
This is wrong. In my experience, listen to me versus Andrew Sheps. You didn't see Foo Fighters and Red Hot Chili Peppers phoning this fucking noob up, did they? My God.
In my experience, when using most modern and professional audio conversion, even at 44.1, the benefits of running through a good piece of hardware far outweigh any degradation. In fact, using just a single plugin will degrade your sound and phase much worse than any round trip of A to DA conversion.
Again, subjective. Again, depends on the hardware, depends on the plugin.
Just look to what most professional mastering engineers do, and I promise you that 99% of their chain is not in the box.
Right, okay. So he's trying to tell me that he knows every single mastering engineer. Yes, they have some analog gear as well, but a lot of them have been selling their analog gear and moving on to plugins. Acoustic audio stuff has been actually really big in the mastering world, okay? Think about the amount of mastering guys that use plugins, right? There are mastering plugins. Ozone, for example, fabfilter. You're telling me that all 99%, right, of mastering engineers only use hardware? Fucking what? Howie Weinberg just came out last week and was talking all about the BX True Peak and about how it's amazing, and loads of like big mastering engineers turning around saying, I probably actually like I'm using this instead of fucking analog chains and other plugins that I use. Again, he's just controversial. Just being controversial for the sake of being controversial.
Then you have Warren Hewitt of Produce Like a Pro, who I also really appreciate. He has also said that he didn't feel comfortable using plugins across his mix bus, and that you can get away with plugins in the mix as long as it's tracked right. Let's think about that for a second, because circling back to Sheps, he says similar things, both expressing the importance of tracking with real gear in the chain. Here lies another contradiction. If the plugins are just as good, why would tracking with hardware matter?
No, that's true. In terms of tracking, I know a lot of guys that track with analog gear. So yeah, that is something that a lot of guys use. But however, he's not spoken about UAD. You think about a lot of people are using Luna, a lot of people are using the UAD stuff, all the pre's and stuff for tracking, because again, you don't have the latency involved in that as well. So again, he's not speaking about that. I know a lot of people that are using the UAD pre's now. So let's move on.
So it all comes down to convenience and compromise. Easy sell, easy buy. Why sell a $10,000 compressor to one person when you can sell a $100 piece of software to 100,000 people? When you think in these terms, it's easy to see why audio is becoming not unlike a 99-cent McDonald's cheeseburger. Quick, cheap, and convenient, but with little sustenance.
I wouldn't call them fucking cheap, right? Have you seen Softtube's prices, right? Have you seen Softtube's prices? Have you seen Universal Audio's pricing, okay? Like, has this guy checked out other plugin developers, right? It's certainly not cheap. My God, try getting Soothe. I've been waiting on Soothe to go on a good deal for about fucking 2 years. Okay, now, man. Right, let's go on.
In a Sound on Sound magazine interview from 2008, mixing engineer Rich Costi, who mixed the Foo Fighters song The Pretender, which is one of the most successful alternative rock songs in history of American music.
I love Foo Fighters. I love the song. But is it?
Said this, I don't tend to use the plugins that much. They're really not that interesting in my opinion.
The opinion of one engineer. One engineer. Fucking go on YouTube and you fucking find Mix with the Masters, and all of them are using plugins. They're nearly all using plugins. Most of them are working hybrid. Fucking hell.
Don't panic. Don't be discouraged. Just know that this is the truth. And then for those of you following along shaking your heads, ask yourself this. How much experience do I truly have working with the plugins and then their hardware counterparts?
Actually, I've done, 12 videos. 12, I've even done an Aphex. I even bought analog gear. But yes, you have mix analog, you have analog access, or access analog, I always get the two mixed up. You can stream analog hardware from your computer, and you use Prism converters and Burl converters. I've got good experience with doing it, and guess what? You can too. And so can he. And he could have done audio tests and used them, but he didn't because he doesn't want to. Because he doesn't have that much experience with all the rest of the plugins, does he? Really? Sounds like he's used Waves and UAD, and that's about it. Didn't mention Plugin Alliance, didn't mention Slate, didn't mention noiseash, didn't mention fabfilter, they didn't mention anybody else. My God.
And then how much experience do I have actually shooting out both? I used to use software exclusively for many, many years, and I always fought to find their very limited sweet spots, but they can be found. You can, as Mr. Lord Algae put it, make it work. As they say, trust your ears, but know that your ears can lie and play tricks on you.
I forgot that's the way he ended it. How great is that? Trust your ears, but know that your ears can lie. And know what, guys? I know that, eh? So that's why I do blind tests, okay? And I match everything to integral LUFS, I match curves, I spend so much time using this because I trust my bloody ear. And guess what? Loads of people go, wow, that sounded almost identical to the hardware. Or know what? There is differences, but know what? It isn't like 5, 6, 3 grand's worth of difference, eh? So, yeah, maybe he should have checked. You know what? It was 9 months ago. I hadn't really done any of those tests yet. Such a shame, because I wonder if he would have made this video, if he would have maybe seen some of the videos that I'd made, eh? Ach well. It's out there. What's he still got left to say? Let's see.
For me, my ears continue to evolve over the 15 years of me obsessively fiddling with audio equipment.
But where's your test? Have you been fiddling for 15 years? Because it looked like you fucking spent 15 years finding all these photos to put in your fucking stupid video. 15 years and you've got no audio test for us to listen to. Oh, fucking hell.
And those ears continue to drive me to the proper tools. Those proper sonic tools 99% of the time being hardware, and all while in spite being drastically less convenient. But my personal quest is not that of convenience. So I pose to you, what is yours? For those using these plugins, assuming it's just as good, because that's what you keep being sold, I hope you simply enjoy the journey and it takes you far enough to find that out for yourself. For those who say it doesn't matter, well, then I guess nothing does. And I'll see you in a forest where we can sit and meditate.
Right, okay, let's just sum it up. This video is purely for the algorithm. It's purely for controversy. It's purely for being shared and for people to argue about analog versus digital. Just trust your ears, guys, eh? Trust your ears, trust you, do whatever's best for you. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't listen to chumps like this. This whole analog versus digital thing is becoming so close to the point, guys, but I'm just going to say it. They're all tools now. They're all tools, and it all depends on how you use it, right? You could have a Fairchild, right? And somebody could have a Fairchild plugin and make it sound better than you could the hardware, right? Again, it's all about ears. It's all about the person, the engineer. It's all about the learnings that you take about being a better mixer. All the stuff about phase and blah, 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 blah. Leave that for the plugin developers, right? Like, guys, can we just end it by saying it's hit and miss, right? That is analog versus digital. They are all tools, right? There's times that plugins may sound better and give you more. There's times analog might give you a little bit more magic. But again, it depends on the unit, depends on the plugin. There's so many variables and it depends on your set of ears and your preference. All right, so hopefully this gets recommended with that video so people can watch this and you guys feel a little bit better in the notion that no, you don't need to buy analog hardware and waste thousands of pounds just because analog is better, okay? Sometimes it might be better for you, sometimes it might not. But if you want to test for yourself, then subscribe so you can keep up to date with all the shootouts that I do. Check out the hardware versus plugins playlist that I made, as well as all the different plugin shootouts that I've made and all the general audio geekness that's on this channel, okay? Have a great day, guys. And I'll see you again soon.